If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hiya folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness, joining me for another review of Star Trek Discovery. It's actually the season finale that I'm going to be covering today. 2 episodes, because I haven't been able to get around to doing episode 12, so we have episode 12 and episode 13, the season finale. I'm going solo today. I'm not joined by Dan Ryan. He's got a lot going on at the moment, so he's unfortunately not able to join me. I think he's kind of given up on Star Trek Discovery as well. So straight out the gate, I want to say that these 2 episodes, it's been a long time since I've had as much fun as I have watching these 2 episodes of this 2 hours. I really enjoyed watching them. Unintentionally, these 2 episodes were absolutely hilarious. I laughed so much watching them. It was the ineptitude of the plot, the crazy shit that was going on in it, but I'll get to that anyway. So we're going to begin with episode 12. There is a Tide, is the title of the episode. And we begin with the Emerald Chain putting their people on Discovery. We have a bit of a fake battle where they stage a battle between Discovery and Osiris' ship to get the Federation to lower their shields around Federation headquarters and let Discovery in. Meanwhile, Book and Burnham get their ship into Discovery shuttle bay before the Discovery is let through the shields. So very quickly, Book and Burnham get on board Discovery, and Book allows himself to be captured. In the meantime, Burnham is sneaking about. She gets attacked. She gets stabbed in the leg. She sends a message out to her mom on the Vulcan-Romulan homeworld asking for help. Meanwhile, the bridge crew overcome their guards that are keeping them in captivity, and they prepare a plan to help Michael Burnham. Old Mikey gets accosted in a Jeffries tube, but she gets her attacker spaced in the process. She loses her boots and her socks during this process. Then she runs about the ship barefoot for a bit, and the bridge crew, they find out that she's alive and well, and they all whoop and cheer at her ingenuity. Eventually, Osiris sends a message to Starfleet headquarters asking for a meeting with Admiral Vance, and she says that she wants to unite the Emerald Chain with Starfleet to create a new type of federation. At the time, I thought, well, there's got to be a catch to this, and there was. So we flip back to the bridge crew, and they escape out into the ship. Michael Burnham frees Stamets. Stamets wants to jump the Discovery to the planet where the burn took place to rescue his partner, the Doc, and Adira, but Burnham renders him unconscious. Vance says that Osiris' deal is worth considering, but says that she would have to step down from her position in charge of the Emerald Chain and stand trial for her crimes against the various cultures and that she's been attacking and abusing and slavery and all that kind of thing, which she doesn't like. And then she basically gets her arse in her hands, and she has a bit of a strop, and she storms out. He says something about her facing justice, and she says, well, you're going to get some justice as well. She heads back to Discovery's bridge. Then she wants to get the sensors fixed so that they can find the Discovery's crew that are left on board. Book tries to stop her by offering to give her a way into the Verubian Nebula to get all the dilithium that the Emerald Chain would need. Back to Burnham, she puts Stammet in an electropod type thing, blows him out into space to stop Osiris from being able to use him to activate the spore drive. The bridge crew go all Avengers and they storm the armory for weapons. Then they meet up with 3 service robot type droid things. I called them Huey, Louie and Dewey as I was watching it. They show up, and it seems that they possess what's left of the Sphere data, the AI program that likes all the old films. And then they basically decide that they're going to team up with these droids and rescue the ship. And that really is it for the plot for this episode. There are loads of little things that go on in this episode. Most of them were, unintentionally hilarious. A few little interesting things about identity politics and inclusion and all that kind of thing. The political platform that Alex Kurtzman calls Star Trek now, as well as many other writers on the show. We have a man in a semi-wheelchair in engineering. It's not got any wheels on it, but it's kind of hovers around. My question at this point was, they haven't developed non-wheelchair technology, replacement body parts and all that kind of thing, body limbs and that, and repairing spines and things like that, which they had done by the time of the TNG era. Somebody would argue that the technology has slipped back a bit, but it doesn't seem to be that way when you look at the technology that Starfleet's got now. really, this was just an excuse to have someone in a wheelchair or something that looked like a wheelchair. So it's inclusion, all that kind of thing, but it's very tokenistic. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just put there just so that they can check a few boxes. Another thing that I noticed was that the guards that worked for the Emerald Chain, Osira's guards, they look like a cross between the Kryptonian guards from the late 1970s Superman film and the soldiers from the Federation in Blake 7, although they were black, not white like they were in Superman, but they were black in Blake 7. But I did think that they very much looked like the Kryptonian guards. We have an absolutely hilarious scene where Stamets basically says to Wheelchair Guy that he has a child, and more laughably, he implied, and I pretty safely can say that this is the case, implied that it was Adira. Adira was his child. I figured that one out, but it was just completely nonsensical. It really was. Tried to sort of make out that these group, him and his doc partner and Adira, they're like this sort of little family. So, anyway. Another thing which really got me was Admiral Vance when he was meeting with Osira and they're eating some food and they're eating some apple or something like that, and she says all about real apples or something like that. And Admiral Vance says that the food they eat is made of shit, of human shit. It's replicated human waste, human shit. Well, he actually says it's shit. Interestingly, it's one of the few expletives that I've noticed in this series. Previous series of Discovery, it's loaded. Star Trek Picard was full of it. It's been a bit light on that one. Nowhere near as many this season, which is a shame because I used to enjoy nothing more than picking these things out. It's like playing expletive bingo on Star Trek. But going back to what I was originally saying, in a nutshell, humans now eat their own shit. And Vance also says that because they eat their own shit, it's crazy when you put it like that, they don't have to fight over real food amongst different cultures anymore. How very evolved of them. It sounds like some sort of great reset food project type thing that's been drawn up in the real world. So that's something to look forward to. Eating the inedible. Yum yum. As Non said in Sweet Sorrow at the end of season 2. But yeah, eat your own shit and enjoy it. The final scene with the robots as well, I got the feeling that they were kind of ripping off all manner of things here, but principally the one thing that stuck in my mind, which was where I got the Huey, Dewey, Louie thing from, is the three little droids from Silent Running. I know they were like little walking around type droids, and these ones are hovering around. But the whole scene at the end there with the bridge crew and these robots heading off to storm the ship and all that kind of thing, it was laughably nonsensical. It really was. The whole episode was pretty much like that, and the same is true of the season finale episode as well. I'll come to that in a moment. One of the things that I also wanted to point out as well, as we're coming into talking about the next episode, is that there seems to be some weird discontinuity going on with episode titles of season 3 of Star Trek Discovery. This began back at the beginning of season 3 when the episode was called That Hope Is You Part 1. It was listed in all the publicity at the time that the second episode was going to be called That Hope Is You Part 2. Then that title got changed. On Christmas Eve, when I put up my very quick review of episode 11, and it's still there now, it's on my thumbnail, it's also on the episode title. I haven't changed it because of not wanting to affect the video, but it was actually listed as being called The Citadel. And as I understand it, the publicity that went out for reviews and in the media and all that kind of thing as well, it was listed as The Citadel. And then for some reason, when the episode was aired, the episode title was changed to Sukal, which is the name of the character that's on the Viridian planet, one of Saru's people. And the same thing happened again with the finale episode of this season. I can't remember what the episode was originally called, but it has been changed literally in the last day or so. That Hope Is You Part 2. So the people working in publicity department and CBS are really inept, because if they want to keep some consistency there so that people know what it is that they're watching and that, they just cannot keep track of these things at all. I know that things in Hollywood do get changed right up to the very, very last minute, but to literally have the episode title changed within 24 hours of it being aired, or less than that, which has been the case with a couple of these episodes this season, is just crazy. It's just really, really bizarre. They really do need to get their act together. But that could be said of so many things about this series, and particularly as we come into the final episode 13 of this season. So, as I say, this episode is called That Hope Is You Part 2, which is like they're implying that this is a sequel to episode 1, but it isn't really. It's just a capper for the end of the episode for the season. I thought maybe that they were ripping off what the X-Files did when they came back with the event series, where we had My Struggle Part 1 at the beginning of the season, and then at the end of the season we had My Struggle Part 2, and then when they came back for season 11 they had My Struggle Part 3 at the beginning of the season, then My Struggle Part 4 at the end of that season. So maybe they were trying to sort of do something like that. But clearly this wasn't something that was planned all the way along, because it's as I say, the original episode title for this last episode was not This Is You, That Hope Is You Part 2. So anyway, let's get into the plot. Adira arrives on Su'Kal's ship, and Adira has got the radiation meds that they all need down there on the planet, the Dark and Saru. They can all see Grey now, Adira's partner, because the holodeck somehow made him tangible to see. I will be getting into the complete craziness of that in a moment. Let's just stick with the plot for now. So Discovery is trying to leave, and Starfleet starts firing on it. We have this bit of a battle going on and all that kind of thing. We find out that air is being vented from the lower decks of Discovery, which is presumably going to affect the crew. We do see that as it goes on. Burnham hails Vance and tells him to stop the firing on Discovery and let them go to the nebula. Then he kind of just stands down, just like that. But as we've said many, many times in our reviews of these episodes, it's Mikey Spock. She's the bestest ever. She can be trusted to get it right. Admiral Vance clearly just, 2 sentences, and that's it. Yeah, just do what you want. Take the ship away. Get away, And she says, you can trust me, and all this kind of thing. And well, he clearly does. So Discovery and the Emerald Chain flagship, they warp away, and we then flip to Osira torturing Book with what she calls a truth serum, but I'll come to that bit in a moment as well. Saru on the planet is trying to get Su'Kal to realise that he's in a holodeck. Burnham rescues Book from the torture. Then she sends a cryptic message to Tilly about birthday parties and fireworks, or something to that effect, which is some sort of memory that Tilly has. And from Burnham's vague message, Tilly deduces that they have to go and break the electromagnetic link between the ship and the warp nacelles. How she quite figured that out from this weird cryptic message about birthdays and fireworks and that, I don't know. I think it was because when that thing happened, they were by the warp nacelles or something, or talked about the warp nacelles. I don't know. She figures it out anyway, as they do. I can't remember which episode review it was, but if you go back and watch the reviews that we've done way back earlier in the season, I think it was the episode where they upgraded Discovery with the up-to-date technology. I called that because I was talking to Dan about it, and I said, what happens if there was just suddenly a power cut and the nacelles just floated away from the ship? Like somebody dropping oars in a rowing boat and they couldn't reach them, so the boat was stuck and the ship was stuck. That's exactly what happens here in this episode. The power goes down and the engines basically just do crazy shit. So yeah. So then back on the planet, we start to get what the writers are trying to explain, how Su'Kal caused the burn, which is something that I didn't cover actually when I was talking about episode 11, how this sort of screamed and it caused the burn to happen. And Adira says that it's something to do with dilithium having a subspace component to it, which is the first I've heard of that in the entirety of Star Trek. I might be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that that's never ever been brought up before, that dilithium crystals have a subspace component to them. Apparently, because of this subspace component to them, the burn could happen everywhere. As I was watching this, I was just thinking, this is just total and techno-babble, that's just nonsensical techno-babble. It's not even good techno-babble like Star Trek used to be. People are just saying shit, and I just kept thinking to myself, just stop saying this random stuff just to try and make it sound like the plot works when it clearly doesn't. And then we have Adira again saying, his scream, Su'Kal, his scream must have travelled at the resonant frequency of the dilithium. Subspace component, blah 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 blah. So that's really what you get in the way of explanation for that. So back on Discovery, the team bridge crew are now suffocating because of the air leak and that. And then Mrs. T, I can't remember her name, the bridge crew member who's got similar hair to Mr. T, but Mrs. T we'll call her. She takes the device that they're going to use, this plot MacGuffin that's going to disrupt the warp nacelles. And then Discovery's engines are blown and the ship goes all wonky and it throws the ship out of warp back into normal space. But this whole plot is just so quickly dismissed because the Emerald Chain ship just simply flies in there, scoops up Discovery, pulls it inside, and then they carry on a warp. So it was kind of a pointless exercise, really. Probably something that they just did to pew pew sort of thing, make something look good and flashy on screen. But it's just as quick as it's done. It's, they set this up over 5 or 10 minutes, and then it doesn't mean anything. Then we have Michael Burnham and Osira start fighting, and they just seem to keep on fighting for what seems like ages. It's a bit like that fight in the film They Live. They really do kick the living crap out of each other, but they just keep on going. There's no broken bones or anything like that. And then Osira gets hold of Michael Burnham and pushes her into like a biomechanical wall console, that kind of console technology that rises up, that organic looking technology. And I immediately thought, which is where you'll finally get the reference to the thumbnail that I've used on this video, is that it reminded me so much of that scene from Superman 3 where Vera gets all tangled up in the wires and the circuitry and basically becomes a zombie robot. It's so much like that. Michael Burnham disappears inside of it, and then she comes out, and I half expected her to be all covered in like biomechanical stuff and all that, and she become like super Michael Burnham and that. She doesn't, but inadvertently what happens is just hilarious because she breaks through, she just shoots Osira and then vomits up a couple of these like microchip things and then she says, "I never quit." So there you go. So back with Tilly and the bridge crew, the remnants of the bridge crew. Tilly defers the captaincy to Michael Burnham. So at this point now, Michael Burnham is the acting captain of Discovery. And Burnham has a plan, as she always does, and it involves blowing up the ship, which they're going to overload the warp core. That's the plan. In fairness, that idea has been done many, many times in the past in Star Trek. It's usually done to call somebody's bluff rather than actually blowing up the ship. In this case, it turns out that they don't blow up the ship. They actually just use the warp core as like a bomb, because they've still got the spore drive, so they assume that they can still fly around in space, but they're going to use it as a bomb and blow Osira's ship. We then go to the planet again, and we have these scenes where Su'Kal and Saru and talking about leaving the holodeck, and then we have Saru saying to Su'Kal, "It's okay to be afraid. You can still step forward," and all these kind of things. And this reminded me very, very much of a similar line that's in the recent Doctor Who episode special, New Year's Day special, where the writers are talking to those people who criticise the changes in these franchises, how they've been ruined by the changes. But it's almost like they're saying to them, "Oh, you're frightened and you don't like change and you have to embrace change," and all this kind of thing. And the Star Trek writers are doing it here again. So, i.e., fear and change is good. These kind of things, they're always backhanded swipes at those people who now recognise how shit these franchises have become because of their tokenistic ideology. But anyway, Saru manages to persuade Su'Kal to leave the holodeck program, and they go out, and Su'Kal sees a recording of his mum dying, and he screamed at the time when this happened, and that was what caused the burn. That's something that I actually called about 20 minutes into the episode. I'll go back over my notes in a minute, but as I was going through my notes, I wrote down, what's the betting that's how the burn happened. His mom died, and then he got all emotional and he screamed, and that caused the burn and that kind of thing. So it's pretty obvious that's what it was going to be, but that was what it was. So Discovery ejects the warp core, and then Book is put in the chamber that Stamets normally uses to use the spore drive technology to jump the ship, because he's empathic or telepathic or something like that, so he can... How that works, again, totally nonsensical. But it works, and then the warp core destroys the Emerald Chain starship. And then Su'Kal says that he wants to put things right from what he did with the burn, and Saru says that he will help him. And then the ship that they're on starts breaking up, but Discovery gets in there just in time, jumps to the rescue, and beams them up from the planet. Discovery returns to Starfleet headquarters, and all the ships are all lined up like a wedding parade with the arches over the top of it for Discovery to fly through the middle, as if to salute the heroes of the hour. Then we have all these scenes talking about how the Federation is going to rebuild now, and how the Trills have rejoined the Federation, and the Vulcans and the Romulans are also considering it. We find out that Saru is going to return with Su'Kal to Kaminar, and then we get the great big doozy of this story. Admiral Vance makes Michael Burnham captain of the Discovery. I would say here that it was inevitable that this was going to happen one day. After all, as the great Lord Doomcock on YouTube says, she's the bestest ever. And, that's what they did. They put her front and centre now. Be interesting to see whether the character of Saru comes back next season, or whether this is really going to be the Mikey Spock show now all the way. And then finally at the end, there's a quote that comes up on screen from Gene Roddenberry talking about how if just two people communicated in the world, really communicated, then the world would be a better place and blah, 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 and all this kind of thing. It's on screen just before the end credits, and it's put there as if to be something very, very profound. But I'm going to say something now that is really quite controversial. There's going to be a lot of Star Trek fans out there who won't like me saying this. I've researched this in my book, Science Fiction and the Hidden Global Agenda, Gene Roddenberry's life and his connections and all those kinds of things. But in a nutshell here, I'm not going to get into that subject now, but in a nutshell, I would say don't bother quoting Gene Roddenberry to justify the political ideologies of the writers on these shows. That was a bad choice, bad move there, because Roddenberry was somebody who was very good at spouting all manner of high-minded platitudes, but he rarely had the convictions to believe in them. I know that can be a very, very controversial thing to say for some people. People will say, how dare you say that about Gene Roddenberry? But I learned a very, very long time ago, and there's plenty of evidence out there to prove this, that one thing that sums up Roddenberry quite accurately is something that I've always kept in mind, is saying things served him well, but only in the moment that it was said anyway. So he was very, very good at saying lots of things, but when it actually come to, it was of the moment for Gene Roddenberry. It was what suited him at the time. He talked the talk, but did he walk the walk? People say that he was humanitarian, humanist, all that kind of thing, and I think there is plenty of evidence out there to say that he was very much whatever suited him at the time, whatever met the needs of the moment, rather than actually believing in them. So I'm going to go back through my notes now just to point out a few more of the absolutely crazy, crazy things that happened in this episode. So one of the first things that I noticed was the scene where Gray became visible to the other characters in the holodeck. How does the holodeck do this? That was a question I asked myself at the time. Because I would say, in the case of Star Trek Discovery, it does it because it just can. Just because. It's like the magic space ocarina that was seen in Star Trek Picard, that it just does things if you think it, and just thinks them into being, basically. Do you remember that time when Star Trek was at least tried to be vaguely scientific many, many years ago? It's not now. People could argue that holodeck technology has advanced and it sensed Adira's brain patterns and manifested those brain patterns as... I don't even know why I'm trying to justify it and explain it here. I'm really not trying to justify it. But it is just beyond the realms of lunacy. It is just something that... It's not even something that you can say that it serves the plot. It was just an excuse to have that character of Gray on the screen. And I also want to point out something that I'm sure people are going to be saying that I'm coming at this for an istanism reason. It's got nothing to do with that. The actor that plays Gray is absolutely shit as an actor. Really is a shit actor. I've never quite seen anything like it, actually, but there you go. So another thing that I noticed was the line about where Cyrus says, "Get the truth serum ready." And immediately I just thought, this sounds like some cheesy 60s spy series, a spy TV show, like where, "Get the truth serum, we will make them talk." This is the caliber of the writing on this show. Another example of the caliber on this writing of this show is Asira's henchman, chap bloke. The line he says, "They'll sing like an Alconian sorrow hawk." I mean, you gotta love the dialogue in this show, you really have. Another little gem is Michael Burnham smirking and saying to Asira, "What can I say? We're Starfleet." The hysterical imagery of the team bridge crew fighting their way through the corridors, flanked by Huey, Dewey and Louie. It really was unintentionally hilarious. It really was. Another thing that we had in the episode was the Vulcan and Romulan fleets turning up to help. I did think to myself, how the hell have they got there that fast? Because they haven't got spore drive technology, they've only got warp drive technology, and the planet where the Navarre, or whatever it's called, is not round the corner. The message was sent by Michael Burnham not that long ago in the episode, and even if we assume that there are time jumps here, it's not massive time jumps. So I did wonder about really how could they get there that quickly, but of course these things don't matter. This is the Westeros Express now in Star Trek. On the subject of writing and that, I did note that this episode was written by Michelle Paradise, which really explains a hell of a lot. So I mentioned about the identity politics and the grandstanding, all this kind of thing in this episode, and there's a lot of it, especially when they tagged on the quote from Gene Roddenberry on the end trying to do that. But there was another line from Saru as well, where he said, outside is beautiful and diverse. So there's that word. That's the platform. And we're talking about the techno jargon as well. I tried to explain the burn as such as it is, which is just crazy shit. People wondering about what the burn was and how it was, and all it just turned out to be this scream. But they do try to explain it, and we have the Doctor saying that he's a polyploid. Polyploid. Their genes can be affected by the environment in utero, when they're growing inside. And I just thought to myself, what a load of old bollocks it really is. This is just a piss poor way of trying to explain away something that is just crazy. It just doesn't. It's like, maybe in the realms of Harry Potter, but not in something like Star Trek, which has always prided itself on at least trying to sound genuinely scientific, and did have scientific advisors, and did consult people in NASA and Jet Propulsion Laboratories and Rockwell International and the RAND Corporation, the Planetary Society. The list goes on and on and on. I doubt very much that any of those people are advising this show anymore. So I said earlier, about 20 minutes or so into this episode, I surmised, I have it here in my notes, that the burn happened because Sukao's mummy died and got upset. We had another absolutely fantastic line from Mrs. T when she's about to go off and use this bomb device thing to blow off the nacelle. And she stops for a second and she turns around and looks at the bridge crew people and she goes, I love you all. And I absolutely wet myself. Can't believe this. Right, this is absolutely fantastic. This one is brilliant. So Discovery has a huge, massive, hollow cavity inside of it where all the turbo lifts shoot around and fly around. We have an extended battle in this sequence involving Mr. Deadwood and Book, and at one point Mikey Spock as well. It's just completely nonsensical. And Mikey Spock has this idea that she's just going to jump down into the turbolift void. She doesn't break a single bone in the process, but when you look at it in the scene, it's clear that the turbolift void inside Discovery is actually bigger than Discovery itself. And I really thought to myself, what the fuck is it? It's effing huge, this is. Huge space. And I just thought to myself, is this like the TARDIS? Bigger on the inside than the outside? It's these kinds of things, isn't it? It's like, there's another scene earlier in the episode where they evacuate the bulk of the crew off Discovery. I think it was actually the previous episode, the bulk of the crew off Discovery. And I don't know, I'm assuming this is quite a few people. It's probably at least a couple of hundred or something like that. And Osiris sends them all over in one shuttlecraft. Now, as I recall from Sweet Sorrow, Discovery has about 1,000 shuttlecrafts. I did wonder where they were all stored, but now that we've seen this massive void cavity inside Discovery that's bigger than the ship itself, maybe that's where all the shuttlecrafts are stored. Maybe we've got an answer for where all these things are being hidden. So why they just used one shuttlecraft to fit in several hundred? Maybe they just greased them all up and slid them all in like a tin of sardines. I don't know. Another scene, which again is unintentionally hilarious, but I absolutely pissed myself laughing, is during the fight between Burnham and Osira, and they point their guns at each other. They point their guns end to end and fire their guns into the barrels of each other's guns. And then there's this shockwave which blows them back. It's absolutely hilarious. Completely defies the laws of physics. I'm not talking about the laws of physics for space weapons and things like that, because how would you do the laws of physics for those things? I'm basically just talking about the laws of physics of force and counterforce. When you have something like that happen between two people, like an explosion like that, it was hilarious. And so finally, the last thing is clearly Michael Burnham being the captain. Has anybody forgotten about all the things that she's done in her career in Starfleet, and even the things that she's done in this season, time and time again, where she's just come up with these nonsensical plots and done things, just took off on her own to do something, and she gets rewarded every time it happens, because it seems that every time she does come up with these nonsensical harebrained schemes and plots and plans and that, she succeeds in every way, shape or form. So maybe that's the reason why. And Admiral Vance does make a point of saying, I'm paraphrasing him here, but we have a very set way of doing things. You think outside the box and you do things differently, and maybe we need more of that now. So your reward for that is we're going to give you the captaincy. You're going to be the captain of the ship. So the writers of this show now, they've got exactly what they've wanted. They've got their representation on screen. And it's been done before many, many times in Star Trek. We talked about this in Star Trek 4, I think it was. We had a black female captain of a starship. It's been done, that was back in the mid-80s, and 1986. So we've had black captains. We've had female captains. But you would think, the way these writers and producers and that on this show talk, that it had never ever been done before. And Mikey Spot was the first time it's happened, first type of representation on screen. She's the bestest ever. And it's just so fake and so phony. It's just tokenistic, and it really, they don't have the convictions of what they're trying to do. They tie themselves up in knots every time they do it anyway. So that really is it for Star Trek Discovery. That's where we get to at the end. It's just complete. It was 2 hours that I laughed a hell of a lot. I really did. And as for scoring these episodes, well, I will say at this point, if it was based on hilarity, these episodes would be up there. Certainly the last episode would be a 10. But it's not humour that's intentional. You're not laughing with the situations. You're not even laughing at anything that's been set up to be intentionally funny. It's just total and utter incompetence on a massive scale. And it's great to see that again, because I really didn't think at any point so far in season 3 of Star Trek Discovery that was gone. It was well and truly there in season 2 of Star Trek Discovery, and it was why I wanted to review Star Trek Discovery season 3, because I wanted to show people how totally out of their depth the writers and producers, all the people involved on this show are with this. They just haven't got a clue what they're doing. They really are just trashing this long-standing, highly respected, fondly remembered, place in people's hearts franchise. They just don't have a clue. They really don't. And they've graced me with that in these last 2 episodes. They really have rewarded my patience. So I'm glad I hung in there. It's a shame that Dan didn't hang in there till the end, but there you go. So I think in terms of a realistic score for these episodes, I really don't know. I think maybe a 1 for both episodes. They were just terrible. I only want to say 1 in as much as there did seem to be some interesting special effects work going on there. It wasn't quite as crap and cut and paste as it normally is on Star Trek, so maybe on that score alone, it looked pretty. Although, to be perfectly honest with you, the direction of it was awful. I mean, some of the shots on the planet with Su'Kal and that, these upside down camera angles and side on ones. I think it was Jonathan Frakes who directed it, which quite surprised me. It really was very badly conceived and very, very badly set up. So that's it. I hope you've enjoyed these Star Trek Discovery reviews. I don't know whether I'm going to be back to review any in the future. I say never. It has been a painful thing to watch, but I'm glad it's rewarded at the end, because it's allowed me to come here and talk about how pathetic this show is as a piss poor excuse for a television program. It's certainly not a representation of Star Trek, and it's delivered. So I just want to say thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, subscribe if you can, if you haven't already. I truly appreciate it. It means so much to the channel, it means so much to me, and it means so much to Dan as well. It really helps us to move along. So take care for now, and I will see you again very, very soon. Bye bye.